Hello and welcome to the Cam Show, Unpacking Within. I'm your host, Cam. And on my podcast, we dive into topics that encourage you to think and act differently. Do you sometimes feel like you're in your own way? Maybe you kind of keep repeating some of the same shit you said you would graduate from. Maybe you just keep self sabotaging ways of how you can actually become better. Maybe you're just not where you thought you would be at this day and age. There was a point in time where a lot of us were in middle school and in high school and were like, we'll be here by the age of 25. We'll be doing this by the age of 30. I'll be working at this place by the age of 35. This is all perfectly okay. I am such a firm believer in things get better with time, and not just with us individually, but just circumstances, really. In the same vein, it's so important that we understand the power that we each have and the true power to create the life that we want. The power to walk into our own power, set ourselves up for success, however that may look. I feel like, and this is just my belief, that God has given each of us power, and I am truly guilty of this too. But I too can sometimes get in my own way of what I think my success would or should be looking like at this point in time. Let's first think about self sabotage, though, right? Like, as an adjective, it's a harmful way, or this is a harmful way to one's own interest or development, and often involuntary or unconscious. And as a noun, it's considered the behaviors or thoughts, especially of an involuntary or unconscious nature, that are harmful to one's own interest or development. Today, I ask you, how are you trying to unlock your full potential? The title of my episode today is Getting the Fuck Out of Your Own Way. When God sees and says that there's a power of life and death that lies on your tongue, that is so true. There are so many ways that I can think of that I have self sabotaged my own life before, and even sometimes now. Procrastination, negative self talk, like fear of failure, you name it. I sometimes can be such a huge perfectionist where I want just every fucking thing to be perfect. And I have to realize everything will not be perfect. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, highs, and lows. Thinking that the world around me should be perfect at all times is, well, one, should be beyond me. But I think that that comes from deeper issues, right? But I sometimes can exude that energy off to other people, and that is not what I ever want to happen. And even though I don't enjoy when it does come up, sometimes I lean into it, sometimes I lean away from it. This has and will never be fair, I don't think, to any human being. Months ago, I was talking with my therapist, of course, and I told him that certain behaviors were coming up for me, and he asked me, what behaviors are you experiencing? And I told him I was having a fear of failure, perfectionism, I was lacking in confidence, etc. Ephesians 3:20 lets us know that there will always be trials and tribulations in life, but God will carry you through every storm in your life and give you strength to make it. I sometimes can't stress enough the importance of pausing and just taking everything in that's happening around us. Again, I am so guilty of this too, but we have the ability to truly run our bodies ragged. And this has never been healthy, and it will never be healthy. And a lot of times I feel like we're sleep deprived. We're often not tapped into the true reality of what's happening all around us. And I have found it so helpful to just stop, pause, breathe, collect your thoughts, collect what's happening around you, and just breathe. There's so much power in breathing, and there's so much power in gathering your thoughts and gathering your mind to be in one space and not 25 different places at once. Like years ago, and I'll give a more current kind of example, but years ago, I would have these episodes or spasms to where I couldn't even think about like what was happening a month from what was actually happening. And this is okay to not always try to think about the future. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is my brain was in so many different places and I was struggling just to be in the current. And I have to tell you, like, that is so not healthy. That's not healthy for any human being to experience. And it's something that I think that we can get a hold to it, but we got to do it sooner than later. Not only that, but I think that it's so important to recognize the moments for yourself and truly understand that when your own personal and limiting beliefs and behaviors are holding you back, it's time to stop. It's time to stop. It's time to breathe. It's time to truly think what's happening around us. Again, the mind is such a wonderful thing, and it's such a powerful tool that we could really use to propel our life, to give us growth mindset, and to also push us to the next level. A lot of us want to get to that next level, whatever that may look like, but sometimes it's us that get in the way. Um, think when you feel like you're going through a tough time, do you fix your mind on this? And is it okay? This is what this will be like. I don't have any power over this. That's wrong. Or does your mind remain positive with the I'll get through this shit, and with every tool that I have, every box that I have in my brain, I will pull everything that's necessary to pull through. I feel like when you have gotten to that point, you are truly at a growth mindset and you're able to say, I can do this. And that statement in itself is really, really powerful. And not only that, but when you're able to do that, you're able to gain your own independence because then you're also not relying on other people. You're not relying on other things to try to get you through. A lot of times I feel like we just talk on the phone just to kind of like get through things that maybe we're not paying attention to. I'm guilty of that. I'm not saying that's everyone's story. That's just mine. And again, it is such a powerful thing to be able to stop and pause and understand what the hell is happening around you. Um, Again, my therapist was just constantly like asking me questions like, what's coming up for you? And again, it was perfectionism, it was procrastination, it was every single thing around self sabotage. And what he did do was give me practical like ways of like stopping and allowing my body to exit that state. And he's like, well, what does your body do when you're in that state of mind? And I'm like, I oftentimes freeze up and I oftentimes sit and then I'll dwell on something that has already happened or something that I have no control over or something that may be even like coming up in the future. And I'm like, I can't stop thinking about this. Pause, pause, just right there, just pause. It is so relieving and it's so touching to be able to just pause and not just do anything, but just breathe. It was so funny because I was talking with my manager, and this was a few weeks ago. And sometimes we can kind of talk about topics like religion and spirituality. And we were talking about the power of breath. And she mentioned that, like, when you do breathe, I feel like you hear Yahweh. I've been trying to find it, but I can't necessarily find it. And maybe I'm just not breathing hard enough. I don't know. But I do know that when you are breathing and when you're practicing breath, there's so many benefits around it. I'm sure you probably know what yoga is, or maybe you know the basics of the practice, but a lot of yoga is also practicing breath, and a lot of meditation is practicing breath. Your breath is able to rule where you are, rule and understand, and give you thought and perspective on what may be happening internally. And that's so important too. Again, lean into you and learn to pause, learn to stop, learn to think and understand what's happening around you. Because I think so many of us, again, myself is guilty, so many of us just kind of like go through the day and just go through the day unaware, not present in our own body. And I do think that sometimes, days can be better than others, but it's okay. It's okay to stop. It's okay to stop and think. It's okay to stop and reflect. Life and the world doesn't tell us to keep going and keep going. If that's your world and you allow the external things to kind of creep into your own mind and be like, you got to keep going, you got to keep going. Okay, girl, go run yourself ragged. I'll meet you on the race or I'll see you somewhere. But pause, do just that. Pause and just sit. I oftentimes think about everything that the world does tell us, though. And a lot of times the world is telling us, like, you got to get up, you got to get it, you got to do this, which is true, okay? Because a lot of us are still operating from a sense or from a source of survival and do it by any means necessary. And I think that the more we're able to stop and understand when it's okay to keep going and when it's okay to stop, I think that we'll be a little bit better. Again, the mind is such a powerful thing, and it's so important to have a growth mindset. And when I feel that I know that I can overcome anything I set my mind to, it frees up so much of my space internally. I remember when I told myself that I wanted to go back to school at some point in my adult life. And I had never really got the opportunity to attend college directly after high school. I have shared this on some previous episodes of mine, but I was literally in the midst of losing my aunt that had raised me and my biological mother. And I had went from graduating high school and immediately going into the workforce. And at the time, my job did offer tuition reimbursement, right? To where you can go to school, work at the same time, and they would help with a certain dollar amount to get your education and get your degree. And I had never taken advantage of it. And I think I was, again, not necessarily thinking about 4 years down the line, 5 years down the line, 15 years down the line. Like, I wasn't able to think that far. And not saying that I am able now, but I'm at least able to even think 5 years down the line. Like, I know within the next year and a half, I will have my degree from college, right? And to understand and to feel and to know that I was able to see things that were happening around me, but also to understand that this is something that was always important to me. I've never truly been a school person. I know that I've always wanted to finish my degree and I've always wanted to get a higher education because I've shown myself that I can do hard things, and this was part this is part of one of them. So I say all that to say I think sometimes we get into our head and we sit into the doubt and we sit into the fear and the procrastination and the scarcity of it all to just sit and just to be still and be frozen. And again, sitting still is perfectly fine. Don't allow your life to just freeze your entire body internally, though. I also, sorry, I also never thought that going to school would be possible until I saw working adults like me who had children. They had very similar jobs to mine, and they were well off into getting their master's degrees. And I had always had this thought in the back of my mind, like, you have to go back. Like, you can't allow other people's circumstance to not necessarily dictate, but to kind of outshine you in a sense. Like, I use that to propel me to the next because I'm like, there is no fucking way that I will allow this to happen on my watch for me not to leave this earth without getting some kind of degree or some kind of higher education. And that may sound kind of cliche in a way, but again, I think it was more about me setting small and achievable goals for myself and saying that I was going to do something and actually fucking doing it. So I also know that life can be crazy and life can be up and down, but life will keep life in. Life will keep lifing, okay? And it's important that, again, still set small attainable goals, but to understand that the sooner you do stuff like go back to school or the sooner you start on the project or the business that you've been wanting to do, like, the closer you are to your dreams, having that one check off the boxing, like being able to check a box off of a to-do list feels so good. It fills you up internally, it fills you up externally. You hold space for other things outside and the inside too. And you just move and you just shake and jive just a little bit differently. That term may sound a little bit country, but it is what it is. And I feel like if I want anyone or if I want you to take anything from this podcast, it's you can do hard things. If you want to go back to school, go back to school. You have everything necessary at your fingertips. That's the other thing. Like, A lot of this is at our fingertips, and we don't realize the tools that are in front of us to propel us to that next level. I think that the moment we're able to tell ourselves that we can do hard things, the moment we have already achieved another level in our life, right? Because there are people that continue to tell themselves, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, but they never actually do it. And I remember seeing, I think it was some quote somewhere where it was like, someone was on their dying bed and they died of regret, or like they died of, or they wish that they didn't regret as much as they did. They wish they didn't regret, not starting a business. Like, I feel like all of those things matter. Like, the small things will not matter, but those moments where you're like, I had every ability and I had every strength imaginable to bring this to life and create this life for myself, and I just didn't. And I also know that for me, from a goal perspective, like, I want specific things for my life and I want my life to look a certain way. I know that it won't come to life the way that I probably imagine it, but if there's things that I know that I can achieve and I know that I can accomplish, I'm gonna set myself out to do it and I'm gonna do it. And when people tell me I can't do it, then that's gonna propel me to even go even harder. I remember starting this podcast and somebody close to me, never any names, I was, kind of explaining the concept and where I wanted to take the podcast. And this is one of those moments where the person is probably in their head more than they think that they are. And some of the first words that that person had responded with were not so supportive. And it wasn't like, you can do this. It was more around, well, like, why? And not that I don't think the person was coming from a not supportive way. I think they were supporting me in the best way that they knew how to in that moment. And I often use that as fuel to do it. And I feel like something beautiful has come from just doing it, right? Nike. Nike, cut me my check. Okay. I'm kidding. Yeah, I feel like there's so much in doing it and checking off a box and being able to say you've done something, that I think gives you confidence. It gives you a piece of that, like, yep, I've done that. And you can happily and successfully say that you've done hard things. I know that I shared that, or I shared some of this information on some previous episodes, but again, I had never thought that school would be possible. I never thought that it was in my wheelhouse to be able to say, I'll be getting my degree, but I just didn't think college was realistic. I couldn't, let alone think of months ahead of me, let alone a 4 year degree. And I just feel like in the state that I was in, I was just fucking terrified. I was terrified to think of something that far. And I was just terrified because I didn't think that I had enough confidence to say, I can do this. And again, telling yourself that you can do something and actually doing it, hand claps and hand snaps, right? I didn't have someone to sit me down and teach me the importance of trying to break things down into smaller, achievable goals for myself. And I will say I started learning more of that in school, in college, and I wish people talked about that more. I feel like I was in a state of mind to where I was just in my mind all the time for whatever reason. And sometimes all we need is that person saying, like, no, like, this is absolutely attainable and you can do it. You just start here. And sometimes those practical, tangible ways to take back and say, step one, step two, step three. Step one was just signing up, or step one was maybe even just like, what school you think you want to go to? Step two was understanding the programs that were available and what I was passionate and learning about. And again, I didn't really have someone to sit me down and do that. Not saying that it was their responsibility, but sometimes those moments help, especially when you are in your head at all times. And I can't express how healthy that can be. Also, in the same vein, I don't think I had a lot of supportive people around me at the time. I do know that I had a lot of supportive people around me, but again, I think I lacked the confidence to say, hey, I want to go back to school. And then even allowing the people around me to be like, that's a really good idea. I remember one time I was in Portland, Oregon at the time, and you know how you kind of like play a game and you start talking about just life in general. And one of the questions was, um, I think it was like, what's your biggest fear? Or like, what's one of the biggest mistakes that you feel like you made? And I had told myself, like, not going to college directly after high school. And I think it's so important that one, you have supportive people around you and not people that just gossip about the next person. Like, we know what they're about, we know what they're capable of. Girl, live your life and make plans for your life to achieve and to do great things because you have every inch of power in your tongue, in your life, in your heart, in the palm of your hands. Like, you should know and you should understand that. I think it's so important to surround yourself with positive, uplifting people. And I remember when I first had the idea of going back to school, so many people around me already were at the point of earning their master's degrees. And just seeing that in itself really propelled me to think and believe that I could do it. And I truly say this, I say all of this really with love, only because you still have to have some self compassion when you're practicing being kind and forgiving yourself. And these are all things that sometimes we just don't know. I remember going on a tangent once before, and again, my therapist, who I would really like to call my best friend, stopped and asked me, have you truly forgiven yourself? And I didn't really have many words other than I think I have. And giving yourself grace and compassion in these moments can be so helpful. And now, this does not in any way, shape, form, or fashion say give yourself grace for every mistake, but do just that. But also be an adult about situations, right? Like, on this episode, I'm discussing getting the fuck out of your own way and how that feeling can be so rewarding. I think we sometimes take for granted the many resources that we're surrounded by, like iPhone, iPad. There's so many things that are at our fingertips that we don't even know it. And like myself, I've been like, well, I need this first before I start this. This is a lie. God has given you everything you need to start living a life on your own behalf, not life's behalf. And you see, when you go through all of these things, of course, they give you grit and perseverance, but it's also important to practice consistency. It's important to practice accountability in the same vein. There just comes a time in your life where you have to kind of just want more for yourself and you have to be sick and tired of repeating the same mistakes, doing the same thing, talking to the same people. Unless you're like, I'm content with where I am. That's perfectly fine too. But a lot of people that I know want to start by doing something. They want to start by having a conversation. They want to start by going back to school. All of these are attainable goals that you can break into small things and check them off box by box. I don't really know how to say that other than that way. And I just wish and truly hope that most people knew the feeling of how rewarding it can be to do just that. I know that there comes a time again in our lives where we um, kind of have to understand, like, well, damn, like I really am in my own way. And I would love to sit down with like a psychologist and break that down. Or like, at what age do adults just say, like, I'm repeating the same things? Like, there's a chart, I can't remember what chart it is, but there's a chart that kind of shows us what happens psychologically with us. And it's from like 0 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years old. But it kind of highlights what happens with us internally, psychologically, and it breaks down what we may be going through in a moment. Like early on, maybe like if you're in a daycare, like you learn basic social skills and you learn how to share, you learn how to speak up for yourself. And truth be known, a lot of us didn't always go through those steps or those psychological steps. So some of us are still kind of not necessarily in a race, but some of us on a marathon to kind of catch up with that stuff. And I can say for myself that I am one of them. And I'm not embarrassed to say that. Like, it is what it is. Your life was, you can't choose, or like you couldn't select who your family was, like as you were born on this earth. Like, you were born into your family because you were just born into your family. You had no control over that. And there's beauty in that. And sometimes there's things where you're like, damn, like, I wish I could have just had this. That's okay, boo. You just got to work a little bit harder, and you just got to do things a little bit differently. And that's perfectly fine too. I know that these kinds of statements truly halted me and my growth of overcoming anything hard. And I often had not celebrated small wins. I am having to define what fear and what failure looks and feels like. And statements like, I can do this, or I knew that I could do it, is so important even in this moment. With anything hard, the reward is likely worthwhile. And I have to consistently tell myself that I too have the opportunity to learn from my mistakes and apply the same lessons that I'm learning along the way. I now have the ability to visualize what success looks like for me. So that's through positive affirmations, that's through good self talk to myself, even just getting through the week, right? Like, I am celebrating, I am marking in my journal that I had a successful week, no matter how much bullshit popped up. And earlier this year, I was able to make a vision board, and something that I had never done in my life before. And I broke it down into quarters, again, smaller wins. And with it already being in June, side note, where has the time gone? Like, I cannot believe I'm saying that it's already mid year. Like, it's already 6 out of the 12 months of the year. But with it being mid year already, it's time to kind of recalibrate on some of the wins and the opportunities, and just kind of see like where I need to make some changes. I broke it down by like finances, personal goals, professional goals, relationship goals, and really everything that I wanted to buy myself this year. I am typically pretty stingy again. I'm just now learning to celebrate. And sometimes learning to celebrate is going to go get your feet done, going to get your eyebrows. I don't get my eyebrows done, but women do. So other men do too. Like, those are small celebrations that you can give yourself, that you can reward yourself with and say, you know what, I deserve that. I deserve this. It's okay that I celebrate myself in this way. And I wish that more people felt and understood and knew that, because it could be a healthy way of giving yourself permission for things that you may be experiencing. I can't also stress enough how it is so important to keep learning, keep learning and keep growing. Never stop learning and never stop growing, because I feel like the moment we feel like we're not learning or we're not growing, you kind of, I don't know, you get pause, right? Like, you get like this you get this self static motion to where nothing truly happens, and you truly just let life happen to you. And it's okay, I think, sometimes to be there, but it's also okay to celebrate that you want more out of that space, or you don't want to be in that space any longer. Um, Again, we are operating this earth the very first time, so there's no rule book to it. There's no manual guide. Like, a lot of us are still understanding that there's going to be challenges and opportunities for growth. But again, it is up to each of us to tap into our greatest potential and really create the life that we want for ourselves. My thoughts are with everybody that's still choosing to get up, get at it, and just go. Like, just for making it through today, like, you are worthy, you are capable of doing anything you set your mind to. And as you all know, I always like to leave you with a song to listen to after my episodes. And since I can't just click a damn button and play it for you, I will give it to you. The song for today is Confidently Lost by Sabrina Claudio. And it's a really good song because it helps me pause, and it helps me just sit still just for a little moment. And it lets me know I am in control of this moment. And that's okay. I thank you for tuning in to this episode, and hopefully you've gotten a few things that you've been able to kind of take back to your own life and apply to whatever you have going on. I love you, and I will talk to you next week.